Sauron was not always the Dark Lord of Middle-earth. In the beginning, he was a Maya known for his extraordinary skills. However, his story is one of tragic ambition and relentless pride. Guided by an obsession with control and order, he aligned himself with Morgoth, the first Dark Lord, abandoning the path of creation for one of domination. As Middle-earth endured ages of turmoil, the question remains, how does a Maya become Middle-earth's greatest threat? Was there a moment when he might have turned back from the shadow? Sauron's choices reveal a complex character, driven by ambition, fear, and pride. We'll dive into the pivotal moments of his existence, the forces that shaped him, and whether redemption was ever within his grasp. Could the greatest villain of Tolkien's legendarium have found a different path, or was he doomed to darkness by his own hand? Mairoun, who would later become known as Sauron, began his existence as a Maya of exceptional talent and intellect. As a servant of Aule, Mairoun dedicated himself to perfecting the art of forging, constructing, and organizing. He was admired by many for his unparalleled skill in crafting intricate works, and for his alignment with Uli's ideals of bringing structure and harmony to the world. His innate desire for order made him an ideal servant of the Valar, but it also planted the seeds of his eventual fall. Over time, Mairoun's passion for structure transformed into an obsession with control. He began to believe that perfection could only be achieved through domination, where all things would bend to his will. This shift in perspective led him to prioritize his own vision of a flawless world over the collaborative efforts of his peers. Instead of working in harmony with others, Mairoun sought to impose his will upon them, believing that his way was superior. This mindset marked the beginning of his descent as he turned away from the virtues of creation and harmony, stepping onto a path that would ultimately lead him to Morgoth and the darkness that followed. Morgoth's rebellion against the Valar offered Mairoun something he craved: power without limitation. While Aule had taught him the virtues of creation, Mairoun grew frustrated by the constraints placed upon his vision. He viewed Morgoth's defiance not as mere rebellion, but as an opportunity to impose his own ideals of order upon the world of Arda. Morgoth's promise of freedom from the rules of the Valar was too tempting for the Maya to resist, for it aligned with his growing belief that true perfection could only be achieved through complete control. By joining Morgoth, Mairoun took the first definitive step toward corruption. No longer bound by the collaborative ethos of Aule and the Valar, he embraced discord and domination as tools to reshape the world, according to his will. He saw himself as a force of order amidst chaos, rationalizing his allegiance to Melkor as a necessary means to achieve his vision. However, this justification only masked the darkness taking root within him, as the influence of Morgoth began to twist his ideals into something far more destructive. His choice to serve the first Dark Lord set him on a path of tyranny, marking the beginning of his transformation into Sauron. The fallen Maya served Morgoth by initially spying on the Valar and spreading discord among the peoples of Middle-earth. His cunning and ambition made him indispensable to Morgoth's efforts to dominate the world. Sauron's influence grew as he took on the role of chief lieutenant within Morgoth's armies, orchestrating campaigns of terror that set the stage for Middle-earth's eventual devastation. When the War of Wrath finally erupted, it became the largest and most destructive conflict in Arda's history. The Valar, alongside elves and men, launched a relentless assault on Angband, Morgoth's fortress in the far north. Mountains crumbled under the Valar's might, and the rivers of Beleriand ran red with the blood of elves, men, and Morgoth's vile creations. Entire regions, including Beleriand itself, were swallowed by the sea, leaving only fragments of the land behind. The sky burned as dragons, led by Ankalagon the Black, unleashed devastation before the mighty beast was cast down by Erendil, shattering Thangorodrim's peaks. Despite his immense power and endless legions, Morgoth was ultimately defeated, captured in chains, and cast into the void by the Valar. In the wake of Morgoth's defeat, Sauron found himself at a crossroads. As the Valar's herald, Eönwë had been tasked with bringing order to the shattered remnants of Morgoth's forces. When Sauron approached Eönwë, he feigned remorse, acknowledging the evil he had done and expressing a desire to change. Yet beneath this outward display of repentance, Sauron's pride and fear loomed large. Kjolnway's invitation to return to Valinor for judgment presented Sauron with a chance for true redemption. However, the thought of facing the Valar, admitting his failure and submitting was too much for his pride to bear. Instead of seizing this opportunity, Sauron chose to retreat into the shadows, abandoning any pretense of atonement. This encounter revealed a pivotal truth about Sauron's character, his unwillingness to humble himself and accept the consequences of his actions. While he recognized the path of redemption, his fear of humiliation and loss of power removed any sincere desire to change. Thus he turned away from Eärnway's offer, setting himself on the path to becoming the next Dark Lord and inheriting Morgoth's legacy of evil. Knowing that he could not stand against the combined forces of the Valar and the Free Peoples, Sauron chose to avoid punishment by going into hiding. This self-imposed exile was not one of regret, but of preparation. In secret, Sauron began to plot his return, carefully laying the groundwork for his eventual resurgence. During his time in the shadows, he rebuilt his armies, crafting new forces of evil to serve his ambitions. He created terrifying creatures, twisted by dark magic, and fortified his plans to dominate Middle-earth. His isolation only deepened his bitterness and fueled his desire for control. Cut off from the world, his thoughts turned increasingly to vengeance and the re-establishment of his dominion. This period of hiding allowed Sauron's corrupt nature to fester. His anger toward the Valar and his disdain for the Free Peoples hardened into an unrelenting drive for power. The fall of Morgoth had not taught him humility. Instead, it emboldened him to rise as his successor, determined to finish what the evil Valar had started. In a cunning display of deception, Sauron re-emerged in the guise of Annatar, the Lord of Gifts. Posing as a benevolent figure, he approached the elves of Eregion, offering to share his vast knowledge. Annatar's charm and apparent wisdom quickly gained him the trust of the elven smiths, particularly Celebrimbor, a descendant of Feanor. Unbeknownst to them, Sauron's true intent was far from benevolent. Under Annatar's guidance, Celebrimbor and the elves achieved remarkable feats of craftsmanship, creating the Rings of Power. Each ring was imbued with extraordinary abilities, designed to enhance the strength and influence of its bearer. However, Sauron had a far darker purpose. While the elves forged their rings, Sauron secretly crafted the One Ring in the fires of Mount Doom, pouring a significant part of his power into it. This ring was designed to dominate the others, binding their bearers to his will. The forging of the Rings of Power marked a critical turning point in Sauron's strategy. No longer content with subtle manipulation, he sought outright domination of Middle-earth. Through these rings, he planned to ensnare the leaders of elves, men, and dwarves, creating a web of control that would ensure his rise as the undisputed ruler of the world. The One Ring was unlike any other artifact in Middle-earth. Forged by Sauron in the fires of Mount Doom, it was imbued with a significant portion of his own power, linking its existence to his very being. This unique connection made the ring both the source of his greatest strength and his ultimate weakness. Its purpose was singular: to dominate all life by binding the bearers of the other rings to its will. When Sauron first wore the ring, its influence immediately exposed his treachery. The elves in particular sensed the dark intent behind its creation and acted quickly to resist his control. This betrayal marked a moment of reckoning as the Free Peoples began to understand the true extent of Sauron's ambitions. The elves hid the 3 elven rings and fought a devastating war to protect them. Sauron regained most of the rings during the sack of Eregion and slaughtered many elves, including Celebrimbor. Not long after, Sauron's arrival in Numenor marked one of the most cunning and destructive chapters in his quest for domination. After being captured by Ar-Pharazôn, the last king of Numenor, Sauron was brought to the island as a prisoner. However, what began as his captivity soon became his greatest opportunity for manipulation. Using his silver tongue, Sauron appealed to Ar-Pharazôn's greatest fear, death. He convinced the king that he held the secrets to immortality and began planting seeds of doubt about the Valar's authority. Sauron's influence grew rapidly as he became an advisor to the king. He established a cult dedicated to Morgoth, corrupting the once pure faith of the Númenóreans. This cult spread throughout the kingdom, encouraging its people to abandon their reverence for the Valar and embrace Morgoth as the true power of the world. Human sacrifices and dark rituals became commonplace as Sauron tightened his grip on the hearts of the Númenóreans. Under his guidance, Ar-Pharazôn defied the Valar by assembling a massive fleet to invade Aman, the Undying Lands. This act of arrogance led to the ultimate downfall of Númenor. The island was swallowed by the sea, leaving only a few survivors to carry on its legacy. Sauron's actions in Númenor demonstrated his unparalleled ability to destroy entire civilizations, turning the greatest kingdom of men into a cautionary tale of pride and corruption. After the fall of Númenor, Sauron's physical form was destroyed, but his spirit endured. Driven by an unrelenting will to dominate, he returned to Middle-earth, where he began the slow and deliberate process of rebuilding his dominion. His return was marked by the effort to establish a new seat of power, leading to the construction of Barad-dûr, the Dark Tower. Built with the help of enslaved labor and dark sorcery, Barad-dûr stood as a towering monument to his strength and ambition, a visible reminder of the shadow that had returned to threaten Middle-earth. To expand his influence, Sauron turned his attention to the local tribes of men, particularly those easily swayed by promises of power and wealth. He exploited their fears and desires, gradually corrupting them and turning them into loyal followers. Many of these tribes became the backbone of his growing army, serving as pawns in his larger schemes. The people of Middle-earth, who had believed the darkness vanquished, were thrown into despair at Sauron's return. His presence alone reignited ancient fears, while his growing power threatened the fragile peace of the land. The Second Age of Middle-earth was hauled by Sauron's relentless campaign for destruction. His forces clashed with the elves and men in a series of devastating battles as the Dark Lord sought to extend his control across the lands. The elves, led by figures such as Gil-galad and Elrond, mounted fierce resistance while the kingdoms of men under High King Elendil joined the fight. Despite their valor, the overwhelming power of Sauron's armies, which included countless orcs, trolls, and corrupted men, pushed the free people to the brink of despair. Faced with annihilation, the last alliance of elves and men was formed, uniting their strength against the Dark Lord. This unprecedented coalition, led by the High Kings, marched on Mordor to confront Sauron directly. After fighting their way through, the siege of Barad-dûr lasted for years, as the combined forces of the Alliance fought against the nearly insurmountable defenses of the Dark Tower. The war culminated in a final fateful battle on the slopes of Mount Doom. Gil-galad and Elendil, the leaders of the Alliance, faced Sauron in direct combat. Though they fought with bravery, both were slain by the Dark Lord. Yet their sacrifice was not in vain, as Isildur, Elendil's son, managed to cut the One Ring from Sauron's hand, severing his physical form from his power. This act brought the war to an end, at least for the time. The One Ring's survival set the stage for the events of the Third Age. When Isildur cut the ring from Sauron's hand, it seemed like the darkness had finally been defeated. Yet instead of destroying it in the fires of Mount Doom, Isildur chose to keep the ring for himself. He saw it as a token of his family's victory, unaware of its corrupting power. This single decision marked one of the most pivotal moments in Middle-earth's history, as it allowed the ring's evil influence to persist. However, Isildur's possession of the ring was short-lived. On his journey towards Arnor, his party was ambushed by orcs near the Gladden Fields. As Isildur fled to the river, the ring slipped from his finger, leaving him visible to his enemies. He was slain, and the ring was lost in the River Anduin for over 2 millennia, waiting for the right moment to resurface. Meanwhile, Sauron's spirit endured, tethered to the ring. Though he had lost his physical form, he was far from defeated. From the shadows, Sauron began to rebuild his strength, using the lingering influence of the ring to manipulate and corrupt. The ring's survival ensured that Sauron's presence would continue to haunt Middle-earth. In the year 1100 of the Third Age, Sauron returned as the necromancer in Dol Guldur. Disguising his identity, he quietly took residence in the fortress nestled within the forest. From this shadowy stronghold, Sauron began to rebuild his power, summoning dark creatures and spreading fear across the lands. His presence corrupted the once vibrant greenwood, turning it into the menacing Mirkwood, a forest filled with unnatural shadows and growing malevolence. Sauron's exploitation of events was deliberate and far-reaching. Through emissaries and agents, he sowed discord among the realms of men, turning weaker leaders to his will. Besides them, he even summoned the orcs of Gundabad and Misty Mountain, once again replenishing his forces. Sauron sought to weaken the alliances of the free people, ensuring that they would be unprepared for his eventual rise. His influence extended even to the Nine, whose rings of power he had corrupted long ago. They were turned into the Ring-Wraiths, his most loyal servants. During this time, Gandalf the Grey and the White Council worked tirelessly to counter Sauron's growing power. Gandalf's investigations led him to Dol Guldur, where he confirmed that the necromancer was indeed Sauron in hiding. Though the White Council's assault on Dol Guldur drove the necromancer from the fortress, it was a temporary victory. The Dark Lord retreated to Mordor, where he began rebuilding Barad-dûr and preparing for the War of the Ring. The War of the Ring was the defining conflict of the Third Age, as Sauron's relentless pursuit of the One Ring drove Middle-earth into chaos. Knowing the ring's power was essential to his domination, Sauron unleashed his armies to scour the lands, searching for its location. His forces of orcs, trolls, and evil men swept across Middle-earth, leaving devastation in their wake. At the heart of the resistance were Frodo Baggins and the Fellowship of the Ring. Frodo, bearing the One Ring, undertook the perilous journey to destroy it in the fires of Mount Doom. Aragorn, the heir of Isildur, rallied the men, claiming his rightful place as the king of Gondor. The courage and unity of the free peoples, including the elves, dwarves, and the riders of Rohan, formed a fragile but determined alliance against Sauron's overwhelming might. The Dark Lord's obsession with the ring blinded him to the strength of his enemies. His belief that no one could willingly destroy such a powerful artifact made him underestimate Frodo and his companions. This hubris proved to be his undoing, as it allowed the free peoples to strike decisive blows. The war was defined by monumental battles, such as the siege of Minas Tirith, where Gandalf defended the city against Sauron's massive forces, led by the Witch King of Angmar. The courage of the riders of Rohan and the arrival of Aragorn with the army of the dead turned the tide of the battle, securing a vital victory. The final confrontation occurred at the Black Gate, where Aragorn led a desperate assault to draw Sauron's attention away from Frodo. This bold strategy allowed the hobbits to reach Mount Doom, where the ring was ultimately destroyed. Sauron's power was shattered, his armies scattered, and his dominion ended, bringing peace to Middle-earth and closing the chapter on the Third Age. The destruction of the One Ring marked the definitive end of Sauron's power and the collapse of his dominion over Middle-earth. As Frodo and Sam reached the heart of Mount Doom, it was Gollum's final act of desperation that led to the ring's demise. In his obsessive pursuit of the precious, Gollum bit the ring from Frodo's hand but ultimately fell into the fiery chasm, destroying both himself and the artifact. With the ring's destruction, Sauron's spirit was utterly broken, and the Dark Tower of Barad-dûr crumbled into ruin. His armies, bound to his will through his power, were thrown into disarray, scattering as his shadow disappeared from the land. The aftermath of Sauron's defeat brought profound changes to Middle-earth. Lands long oppressed under his rule were liberated, including regions like Mordor, where his influence had corrupted the very earth itself. The people of Gondor and Rohan, who had endured years of war and fear, finally saw hope restored to their realms. The fall of Sauron symbolized the restoration of balance to Middle-earth. The free peoples, united by their shared sacrifice and courage, paved the way for Aragorn's reign as King Elessar. Under his leadership, the kingdoms of men flourished and alliances with elves and dwarves were strengthened. Sauron's defeat also marked the diminishing influence of evil in Middle-earth, as the Age of Men began and the remnants of darkness were swept away. This final act of triumph brought an end to an age of strife and a renewed sense of hope for future generations. If we were to look deeper at Sauron's downfall, we can see it rooted in his overwhelming pride. His pride blinded him to the strength and resolve of the free peoples of Middle-earth. It led him to believe that no one could resist the power of the One Ring or possess the courage to destroy it. This assumption made him underestimate individuals like Frodo and Sam, who ultimately carried the ring to Mount Doom, defying all expectations. Sauron's overconfidence in the One Ring also became his greatest vulnerability. By pouring so much of his essence into the artifact, he created a singular point of weakness. His reliance on the ring's power made him oblivious to the possibility of its destruction, as he could not fathom anyone willingly casting such a potent object into the fire. Besides his pride, the contrasting paths of Gollum with Sauron's reveal profound truths about redemption and choice. The creature's internal conflict between his Smeagol and Gollum personas symbolized the enduring possibility of redemption. While the ring corrupted him deeply, moments of genuine remorse and selflessness often emerged. Gollum's duality highlighted his ongoing struggle to break free, even as the ring consumed him. Sauron, on the other hand, never exhibited such moments of reflection or remorse. His pride and hunger for power eclipsed any such chance, leaving him focused on domination. Unlike Gollum, who occasionally displayed humanity, Sauron's choices were consistently guided by self-interest and malice. In many ways, Gollum's story serves as a foil to Sauron's. While both were consumed by the ring, their journeys underscore the importance of choice in determining one's fate. Gollum's fleeting attempts at redemption, even if ultimately unsuccessful, show the potential for change within even the most broken individuals. In contrast, Sauron's unwavering rejection of modesty and responsibility sealed his doom, reinforcing that the path to redemption is one that must be actively chosen. However, the biggest influence on Sauron was his master. Morgoth's evil philosophy left an indelible mark on him. As Morgoth's most trusted lieutenant, Sauron absorbed his master's reliance on fear and oppression as tools of control. The evil Valar taught him that to rule, one must break the wills of others, bending them through terror and subjugation. This approach became the cornerstone of Sauron's own strategies as he sought to impose order through absolute power. Even after Morgoth's banishment to the Void, his shadow continued to loom over Middle-earth, manifesting in Sauron's actions. His creation of the One Ring echoed Morgoth's own attempts to corrupt and dominate Iru's creation. The fallen Maya's fixation on controlling the free peoples through the Rings of Power mirrored his master's wrecking of the elves and men in earlier ages. Morgoth's influence was not just a lingering shadow, but a guiding force in Sauron's quest for supremacy. The lessons Sauron learned from Morgoth's failures also shaped his methods, as he sought to refine his strategies and avoid the mistakes that led to his master's downfall. However, one thing different between the fall of the two Dark Lords was the interference of the Valar. It is sometimes asked whether the Valar should have intervened against Sauron. After Morgoth's defeat, the Valar chose to step back from direct involvement in the affairs of Middle-earth, allowing the free peoples to take charge of their own fate. While this decision upheld their philosophy of stewardship rather than domination, it also allowed Sauron to consolidate his power largely unchallenged for centuries. Direct intervention by the Valar could have prevented much of the suffering wrought by Sauron's campaigns. Their might, demonstrated during the War of Wrath, could have swiftly neutralized Sauron's threat. However, such actions might have undermined the autonomy and growth of the free people. The Valar believed that true victory against darkness must come from within the inhabitants of Middle-earth, not from divine intervention. This reliance on the free peoples reflected the Valar's belief in the importance of free will and resilience. By entrusting the task of opposing Sauron to men, elves, and other beings, they hoped to foster unity and strength among the races of Middle-earth. This hands-off approach, while costly, ultimately led to Sauron's downfall through the collective resolve and unity of Middle-earth's inhabitants. Another concept central to Sauron's story is the concept of free will. His downfall was not the result of predestination or an inescapable fate, but rather the culmination of his own choices. His rejection of Eru and his desire for control over others were deliberate acts, each bringing him further down the path of corruption. Sauron's manipulation of others demonstrated his denial of free will to those he sought to dominate. By corrupting the Rings of Power and enslaving the Nine, he imposed his will on others while fully exercising his own, showcasing his hypocrisy. His attempts to control Middle-earth were driven by the belief that only his vision was valid, leaving no room for the autonomy of others. Tolkien's emphasis on free will underscores the power of individual decisions in shaping destiny. While Sauron's choices led to tyranny and eventual defeat, the free peoples, guided by their own choices, rallied to resist him. Sauron's story serves as a timeless cautionary tale about the destructive effects of pride and the corrupting influence of unchecked power. His fall began when his desire for control outweighed his sense of collaboration, leading him to embrace domination as a means to impose his will. Sauron's relentless pursuit of the One Ring symbolized his belief that absolute power could bring order, but it became his undoing. One clear lesson from Sauron's story is no matter what, we should always seek redemption. Unlike others in Middle-earth, he never tried to fix his mistakes. The Dark Lord never showed humility or tried to change his ways. His pride stopped him from asking for forgiveness or seeing the harm he caused. This choice led him to destruction. His story reminds us how important it is to reflect on our actions. It takes courage to admit wrongs and make changes, but it can lead to a better path. The lasting impact of Sauron's actions shows how dangerous unchecked ambition can be. His choices caused pain and suffering for many years, changing the course of Middle-earth's history. Still, his story also shows the strength of those who stood against him. By working together and showing bravery, the free peoples defeated him. They proved that hope and teamwork are powerful enough to overcome even the greatest evil.